All right, we continue now with Iconic Sonics at the iconic Edgewater Hotel, and I've got a group up here with me. I'm very excited to chat with a multi-time NBA Hall of Famer. You know, they talk about the Mount Rushmore of this, the Mount Rushmore of that. We do a Mount Rushmore of Seattle sports. Lenny Wilkens is on it in my book. I don't think there's any question. Coach, great to see you. We'll save the best for last. On the outside over there, my longtime friend, former Husky, former NBA, 10 years in the league, Spencer Hawes, one of the greats from the city of Seattle. And a guy who I believe kind of started with Friends of Hoop, right?
They let me on eventually. I had to work my way up to that one.
Yeah, well, the guy who ran it was tough. He wasn't going to let you in for anything, right?
He drove a hard bargain.
And somebody who I've known since I got here in 1991. You hear about behind-the-scenes people. There's no better behind-the-scenes person in the Seattle sports scene than Sandy Gregory, who was with the Seahawks for 3-4 decades as a person who worked with media and worked with players and worked with synergy in the community and is now involved with the Sonics Legend Fund. Sandy, thanks for being here. It's great to see you. All right, I'm going to start with a little basketball, and I'm going to ask you. So last night, Damian Lillard, who I love watching play, scores 71 points. It's his career high. And he might be able to do more. Who knows? And I got to thinking, I'm going to talk to two guys who put some time in the NBA. And guys are funny. Athletes sometimes can remember to the detail stuff that happened. Sometimes they can't. Coach Wilkens, do you remember any details about your career high as a scorer? It wasn't 71, I will tell you that. No. But do you remember any details at all about your career high as a player?
Not really. Not really. I do remember this, though. When I graduated from college, they had, during the summer, there were a lot of pickup games, and I got 56 in one of them.
How about that?
So I remember that.
How about that?
But other than that, no, not in the NBA.
All right, who knows? Maybe somebody was there. It was at the Coliseum in Seattle, November 29th, 1970, against Atlanta, your former team. 41 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists. A pretty solid night there, Coach. That's not bad, huh?
Well, not at all. I knew it was around 40, but I didn't know exactly.
41, 13 of 22 from the field, 15 of 17 from the free throw line. Learn to shoot your free throws, kids. Spencer, your career high did not come in 1970. I don't think you were even with us yet, if I'm doing the math right. What do you remember, if anything, about your career high points-wise?
I remember Coach subbed me out on the last possession defensively, and I won't name names, but the guy that went in didn't quite do his job, and Kobe buried a three falling out of bounds, and we lost. So that's what I remember about that.
And who were you with then?
Sacramento Kings.
Sacramento Kings is right. New Year's Day of 2010. Remember that? It was January 1st of 2010. And you also, like Lenny, you were in the game, man. You had 30 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists. So everything's running through you that night. 12 of 20 from the field, only 2 of 2 from the line, Coach. He wasn't driving the lane and getting to the line. That's the only thing I could say about that. But you remember getting taken out, huh?
I'll never forget it. It comes up too frequently in the Kobe highlight package. He's standing on the bench.
Guys, I wanted to talk to you a little bit, and then we'll get Sandy involved as well, about basketball in the community, sports in the community, but specifically basketball. And Lenny, no better person than you. I think it was in the early 70s, you learned of a place called the Odessa Brown Clinic in the Central District. And it's not overstating it to say you dedicated your professional life to helping them make a difference with kids. And you're one of lots of Seattle athletes over the years who's tried to do something like that, but you did it to great success. Talk about how you found out about that and what struck you about the Odessa Brown Clinic that you wanted to do so much to help them.
Well, so many things in your life help point you in certain directions. Growing up as a kid, we didn't have great health care. And my dad died when we were 5. So it was very difficult for my mom. And we used to go to this clinic all the time, St. Mary's Hospital. And they'd look at us, and it was like, uh-oh, the Wilkens are here again, And as a kid, I never forgot that, So when time goes on, when I was in college, I was part of Big Brothers, and it was an organization that was always working with young people. When I graduated from college, I went to, I was drafted by the St. Louis Hawks. And in St. Louis, I worked for Monsanto Corporation in the packaging division and learned all about marketing, advertising, promotion, stuff like that. And then I used to work with high school dropouts. And it was funny because some of them were the same age as me. And I'm looking at them and they're looking at me. But it was a great experience. And in Cleveland, I worked with Shoes for Kids. And that was during the holidays. We had a big dinner at this restaurant. We got them to be a part of it. And then we gave these packages to young people, shoes, undergarments, things like that. When I got traded to Seattle, I tell everybody I came here kicking and screaming.
Right, I remember.
Because I was leaving a good team. That's why. And I knew Seattle was an expansion team. And 1 year in the league. And so I knew we didn't have a chance for playoffs. But I met some wonderful people here. And I always mention them. I met two wonderful women who were very active in the community. And they kind of adopted my wife and I. I mean, they would introduce us to people, invite us to things. And her name was Freddie Mae Gauthier, and the other was Toby Burton. And they were very active in the community. And so when I got here, she said, I want you to come over and I want you to see the Odessa Brown Children's Clinic. And I, of course, wanted to know what they did. And they provided health care, education to young people, to young families, irregardless of their ability to pay for the care. They still got it. And so I went over on 23rd and Jackson to see the Odessa Brown Children's Clinic. And I just couldn't believe what they were doing for young people, Native Americans, minorities, whatever. You were welcome there. And they had their medical director was a gal by the name of Blanche Lavizio. And when I saw how she treated these young people with dignity, like they were somebody. And the thing that I felt is that, that lets them know that they can make a difference in this world. They are somebody. And so the clinic became my charity, became my favorite charity. And we started to do different little things, events, to help raise funds for the clinic. And I am very proud of it, to see how it has grown, what it's become to the community, and those are the people that support us, the community,
Right.
support athletes, businesses, whatever. And one of the great people, and I will always say this, was Dr. Ben Danielson. He was the medical director for the clinic, and he has such enthusiasm, and he just loved being there and working with young people, and I thought that was wonderful.
Spencer, I'm not sure anybody can say why this is, but athletes stand out in the community, and kids look up to, and parents, everybody. It's like, one of the benefits of the career is you do get a level of celebrity. Probably sometimes it's like, all right, this is too much. But a lot of times, like, okay, what am I going to do with this? And I know from talking to you that was kind of, and you played in several different cities, so you had to kind of seek out opportunities. But I know that's something you took seriously. Like, look, I've got to make sure that I'm behaving and doing things that will reflect good on my hometown, but also just helping the community where I'm living.
Yeah, I think I was very fortunate kind of before I got drafted and made it to the place where I had the opportunity to really contribute maybe financially or rally people to do the same. My mom always emphasized giving back. I mean, I remember going down when it was still there, the First Avenue Service Center, through a connection with church growing up, going down there to volunteer, making sandwiches, doing little stuff, dropping that off. So she was kind of the one that planted that seed in my sister and I early. And then, as we all know in this room, the Seattle basketball community is unique. And the way that a generation above kind of looks out for the younger generation and so on, I think it's, in all the places I've seen, there's nowhere like it. And Jamal Crawford, who I'm sure everybody in this room is aware of. The work that he's done going on 20 plus years now in Seattle, he's really been a role model for us to see that, we're blessed with amazing opportunities to live out our dreams, but there's also responsibility that comes with it to give back. And I think he's been a great mentor in that department to, bring us up on the basketball court, but also, hey, you got time, you have resources, you have the ability to gather other people around you, and it's, you're beholden. You have this responsibility to give back wherever it is, if it's Children's Hospital or a Boys and Girls Club or whatever your passion is. Just make sure you're not skipping out on that part of on that part of your obligation.
Will Conroy told us on the show a couple of weeks ago that the phrase they use is "send the elevator back down." The kids down there at the bottom said, "Basketball guys, send it back down. They need to get up here with us."
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's simple, but it's very true. And the thing you realize is, everybody thinks they're going to play forever, and you're going to be the young guy, and it goes quick. I know we've all heard that before, but being on the other side now, and the amazing talent that this city has produced and continues to produce, it's fun being the guy kind of rounding up the young guys and saying, all right, this will help you here, but we got to ask a favor out of you. You got to make sure that whether it's at home in Seattle or whatever market you're playing in, that you're doing your part to give back to the game and more importantly, give back to the community, because it really is, as fulfilling or more fulfilling than anything I think that I did on the court.
Lenny, I mentioned earlier that 15 years later, you get people together to talk about the Sonics. People want to come out and see you. They want to see Slick, 3Ds here. They want to hang out and talk, and it's so unique. I mean, for so many years now, you'd think it eventually is going to fade. What, in your estimation, makes Seattle a different community basketball-wise? What is that thread that holds this town together so strongly, even in the wake of losing the team?
Well, the thing I think is that basketball has always given back to the community here. The young players, they weren't afraid to get out and, do camps, invite young people to come see them play, and I was taught the same thing, that you always got to give back to your community. And I would tell young people, secure yourself so that you can give back, okay? And we did clinics. We had basketball camps everywhere. But we also made those camps fun for young people. I was talking to a couple of guys who were at the camp, and I laugh at some of the things we did. Because we used to have a skit where the staff, we did the skit to make them laugh, to make them have fun. Every Tuesday night we had a skit. But it was great. They learned basketball, but they learned to have fun. They learned what it took to be successful. And your community supports you. And I think that anytime you have an opportunity to give back to the community, it's important. It's what makes us strong. It what makes us, allows us to be able to communicate, talk to one another, relate to one another.
So going back to the skit days, who was the best actor? How good an actor were you? Did you?
I was terrible.
Yeah?
I was terrible. I had the easiest role. I had to sit there and not smile, and three other guys would be joking, kidding, and whatnot, and my job was to not smile at all.
That's hard work.
That was easy for me.
It's funny you talk about clinics, and I think of a guy that I think all of us knew up here, Jim Marsh, who ran the Sonics hoops camps for years, and just a delightful man who was taken from us far too early. You talk, Spencer, certainly the players of your vintage and before, like any kid from about the mid '80s till about 2005 knew Jim Marsh, right? I mean, you knew who he was, knew what he stood for, and probably played for him or played against him in one of his leagues or one of his AAU teams.
Yeah, and I think one of the many unique things about Jimmy was whether you were, like you're saying, whether you were a kid like me that was lucky enough to be involved with Friends of Hoop and be in that program, or you're a rival kid playing for Rotary or whoever else, the mutual respect and admiration that everybody had for him, and what you learned from him on the court, I think anybody that knew him would say that paled in comparison to the things that you took in terms of him helping us develop as young men. And I think that was a really, unique, special relationship and opportunity that he provided so many kids from this area and beyond, being a resource for everybody, and also instilling that, you see Jimmy would go from practice and then he'd go run a camp for kids. And it's like, he's already stretched as thin as can be, but he's always making time for the next generation, the younger generation, in all the work that he did. And that definitely rubbed off on all of us that played for him, and many that didn't.
One of the great stories I remember hearing about Jim, and I've talked to a lot of players who played for him, and they all said, oh, this is exactly how it happened, that Jim Marsh used to tell the young kids when they'd travel, says, they'd get ready to leave, and says, did you tip the housekeeper? And the kid, well, no. What kid knows they're supposed to tip the house? And Jim said, no, she's been cleaning up after you, picking up your mess. And I'm assuming if they didn't happen to have $1, he'd give them one, but you'd make sure that they knew that, right?
Yeah, and it's a small thing. It's a little lesson, but from that, obviously, he's trying to teach you a lot more about taking care of people that help you, and taking care of people even if there's nothing that you're going to be able to get from it in return. And I think that's very valuable, and that's one of the million little things that he tried to convey to us as we were kind of coming into our own, as going from young men to adulthood.
All right, Sandy, we've let you sit there long enough. It's time for we're going to put you to work a little bit. We talked about community and community involvement. Talk a little bit about, in the big picture, what you did with the Seahawks for all those years in terms of working with players, with community, and with the organization.
Well, that's exactly it. I was with the Seahawks a little over 42 years, and I started in PR, so there wasn't a community outreach department per se. I was PR, but we did all the player appearances and things from that department. But I think it was about 1990 when they acknowledged that we needed a community department, and I was the first person, and then we actually got our own department about 10 years later. So we had an actual community outreach department. It's working with the players. It's trying to find out, kind of like what Lenny said, you find out what they want to do. There's reasons why players do the things they do. They might have someone in their family that has cancer or diabetes, or maybe they grew up in a foster home. And when you learn those things, you can kind of steer them in the right direction to the projects in the community that they want to do, because they're going to put their heart in it if it's something that really appeals to them. So, for instance, Bobby Ingram, he had a daughter with sickle cell. And he started a walk every year at Seward Park with the Metropolitan Seattle Sickle Cell Association. And he still is involved with that today, even though he doesn't live here. Jacob Green's dad passed away from cancer. Jacob lives in Texas, but he comes back every year to put on his golf tournament to benefit Fred Hutch. He's been doing it since 1988. Kenny Easley, he's got a golf tournament here. He doesn't live here. He comes back to do the golf tournament to benefit Greater Trinity Academy. So these guys are invested in the Seattle community. They want to be part of it. And for them, I think there's more to it. I think when you have these events, the golf tournaments and bowling events, I think it's good for them too to kind of reunite and see each other. I think it's good mentally for them to be around each other. So they're helping the community, but they're helping themselves at the same time. So that's kind of what I did. We had food drives and toy drives and all those different things, worked with Habitat for Humanity, Children's Hospital, a lot of charities. But it was basically learning what the players wanted to do. And if you can help them, I was ordering flowers for Valentine's Day for wives. Anything you can do for them comes back to help you. I was doing the fan mail. Because if you're helping them, then they're there for you. And I can't tell you how many times I would call players and, can you do this last minute? Or can you sign this for an auction? The requests are unbelievable, hundreds a month, literally.
And you guys both know that with all the organizations you were with, there's always people like Sandy, the people that really, you, as an athlete, you say, I want to connect with the community. Well, that's who you go to, right, Spencer? You go to somebody in the office who can do that for you.
And I think that the thing that I've realized, especially being on the other side of it now, is the people that you still have relationships with in the organizations that you were involved with. A lot of times, those are the people that you spend a lot of time during the season, during the off season, but those relationships become so strong that those are oftentimes the people that you still end up having relationships and conversations with after the fact, because it is such important work that they do, and to get everybody involved, it's just there's a sustainability to it.
Right. I want to tell a story, as I told about Jim Marsh, about Sandy, just to kind of let you know what she's about, in my opinion. I got here in 1991, and it struck me as odd that there was no real relationship between the Seahawks and Kenny Easley. And I didn't know the story, but there had been some issues between Kenny and the Seahawks and the medical team, and it's that's kind of beside the point of this story. But at the time, there's no real relationship. And I talked to Gary Wright, who's a mutual friend of ours, and Gary and Sandy work together with the Hawks. And I said, what's going on there? And he says, well, Sandy and I reach out to him every once in a while because he doesn't want to talk to anybody from the team. We reach out to him. And I said, well, what do you say to him? And Gary said, we just tell him we're leaving the light on to get him to come back. And he did eventually. And, those kinds of things are important to you because, and it kind of leads me into the Sonics Legends Fund, which is in a little ways leaving a light on to make sure that we're helping everybody that we can help. And I want you to talk about somebody that you share in your past. You knew Gus Williams. Didn't he help you win a game or two in your career once in a while?
A game or two. Yeah, we won the championship. And Gus was one of the most enthusiastic players, one of them, because we had a few,
right.
But one of them. And he was always there. And when I had an opportunity to trade for him, I jumped on it. And in fact, they told me that to make the trade happen, he had some deferred income at the time, and it was around $70,000. And I didn't even call Sam. I said, yeah, we'll do it. Sam was our owner, Sam Schulman. But afterward, I told him about it, and he kind of looked at me, and he says, well, you sure this guy's worth it? I said, he's worth it, believe me. And he became one of the most exciting players, along with Slick, for the Sonics at that time. And, just a wonderful young man. I talked to him recently by Facebook, and he, when he saw it was me, he can't really speak, but he went crazy, jumping up and down, and everything. And he's doing better, and we're still holding out hope that one day he's going to be able to speak.
And Sandy, and we'll get to Gus and the current thing now, but you knew Gus before Lenny knew Gus. Tell us the story of Gus Williams when you knew him.
So my first real job was working in the sports information office at USC, way back, 1969. And a couple years later, one of the assistant basketball coaches came to me. And by the way, the head coach was Bob Boyd, who has a presence here. He was at Seattle U. One of the assistant basketball coaches came to me and said, we have a new player. He's from New York, and he's homesick. Would you let him use your phone once in a while so he can call home and talk to his mother? And I was telling you, I think that might be against NCAA rules, so I hope there's a statute of limitations on that.
You see the NCAA talk to his mother.
SC's got bigger problems.
Fight on, okay. But so that's how I met Gus. He came into my office so he could call his mom every once in a while. And then I left a couple years later with my boss to go to the World Football League. It folded. And then Gary Wright, that you mentioned, joined us at the World Football League, and the three of us came up to Seattle. In the meantime, Gus graduates, goes to Golden State, and then Lenny reunites us.
For $70,000, can you hear Schulman? For 70, what? So the Sonics Legend Fund, we could not have a better person in charge of this, Sandy. I mean that. I mean, this is fantastic, and you put a face on it, and this is an organization just dedicated to helping our Sonics legends who might need some. Some don't. But it's like anything in life. You're going along, and everything's good, but maybe life throws you a couple of bad breaks, and suddenly you need help. Well, we've got some Sonics players that do. You said you talked to Gus. He had a stroke, wasn't it, about 3 years ago, and has struggled afterwards.
Really struggled, but they got him in a place now where the care is much better, and the treatment and so forth, and a lot of people care about him, are there calling him, trying to encourage him, And so I feel like he's in a better place right now.
And it's a two-way street, or at least a street with different types of traffic, Sandy. We're trying to raise some money to help people out. We're trying to make sure there's awareness of people who might need help, because it's a humbling thing to ask for help. It's one of the toughest things we all have to do. But that's part of it, too, is making sure people know that it's out there.
That's why the website is so important. Thank you, Chris. Because now we can get the word out to everybody, not just to the fans, but to the players themselves that might need some assistance. And it is hard to ask for help. I think you're aware that I had started a fund with the Seahawks.
Right.
We had a couple players. One had a stroke and one had a brain tumor, actually. And they didn't have insurance. And so it gave me the idea maybe we could take the current players' fine money and help our former players. And we did our first grant back in 2013. And that was kind of why I got the idea to help the Sonic players. First, it was Gus, because I knew Gus, and his was literally 3 years ago, his stroke. And then when I found out that Slick, a year later, Slick has a stroke, and they had a GoFundMe going, and I'm like, how can I do something for Gus without trying to help Slick, and how many other guys are out there that need help? And so that's kind of how this fund was created.
And Slick, it's a great feeling for all of us to be able to help you on the road back. Very few people did more for basketball in this town, and being the face of it and being enthusiastic about it. And I've told this story before, and I know you remember it. Slick was with Dave Grosby and I the day the Sonics left town. Slick came into FX McCrory's, and it was the saddest day for all of us. And Slick will be here when the Sonics come back, when Sam and the rest of the crew get the team together and get them back, and that'll be a great day. But we're glad to see the progress you're making, and we're happy to help you through the Sonics Legends Fund, Slick. Thank you very much. And Slick, more than just basketball, was you were a teacher for what, 20 years? How'd you like to have Mr. Watts as your homeroom teacher? I think that'd go down. Spencer would be like, hey, he lets me go play basketball whenever I want, right? The ultimate goal of this, we were talking about it earlier, is maybe we get to a point where today's salaries catch up and there aren't as many guys that need help. But the fact of the matter is, you don't have to go back too far when players earned what you would consider a regular salary. So there are, Sandy, talk a little bit about there are guys that you might not think might need help, but that do.
Absolutely. So with Slick, some of the things that we've been able to do is Donald was taking him to a hyperbaric chamber all the time. And it's not an easy thing when you think about, getting him in the wheelchair and in and out and all that. So the fund was able to purchase a hyperbaric chamber for his home so that it's much easier for them now. The other thing, Slick's getting acupuncture. I love that they're doing these things. Donald is his caregiver, and I think what Donald is doing is pretty admirable, to take him in, and literally your life has changed. So those are the ways that we're helping Slick. With Gus, it's a little bit different. He is, I feel he's a little more isolated. He's in a facility back in the Baltimore area, and he doesn't know a lot of people. So we've been able to provide a caregiver for him 3 hours a day, so at least someone can come in. I went back to see him in September, and when I turned on music, he just came alive. I mean, his legs were moving, he was singing along, he loves that soul music, and he was a whole different person, and I think he really needs someone to come in and play music. He's got the people there, the workers that come in, but they just come and go. They're not there for any length of time. And so having a caregiver, it's 3 hours a day. She comes in, she plays music, she gets him in his wheelchair and gets him out of the room. We're asking that the caregiver can also FaceTime with a lot of his friends because he just doesn't get a lot of visitors. The isolation is what worries me a little bit because he is in a weird city where he knows nobody.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, I talked to Donald the other night. He says some of your speech is coming back, but that frankly some of the words are, profane. That's what's come back first. Is that true? Come on, Slick. I want to talk, though, about a guy who is a part of the Seattle basketball community and always will be. He's more identified in Boston, obviously, but I just finished watching on Netflix the Bill Russell documentary. Spencer, I don't know if you've seen it. It's terrific. And, Coach, I'll start with you. You were a contemporary. You played against Bill. You can speak to how dominant he was and how dominant his team was. I don't know how well you guys knew each other here. I'm assuming you would cross paths occasionally, being in the basketball community. I feel like it's such a shallow question, but what did Bill Russell mean to the basketball community? I mean, for crying out loud, what didn't he mean?
Well, that's right. What didn't he mean? But Bill certainly was an icon. And I met Bill when I was in college. He was guardian to a young player, and they were trying to find a school for him. And my coach at Providence, Joe Mullaney, had played a year with the Celtics. So he knew Russell, and they contacted Joe, and they brought this young player named Jimmy Hadnot to Providence, and the coach asked if I would show him around. And here he is, 6'10". I couldn't believe the size of him, but he had a great sense of humor. He was funny, and so I helped him, just showing him around, telling him about the school and so forth. Jimmy decided to come to Providence College. And we never played together because at that time he had to play freshman ball.
Sure.
And I was a senior. But when I came into the NBA, Bill was very friendly. And when we came into Boston, he'd invite me over for dinner. And the NBA was a little different back then. You know, in St. Louis, at that time, you couldn't even eat in the restaurants downtown. Wow. So, but there were guys who went out of their way to help the NBA become what it is. Bill was always outspoken. He did a lot, I think, for the young guys coming along that time. And so, yeah, we were friends, and we were friends here too. I had a dinner golf tournament. We raised funds for the Odessa Brown Clinic. Bill always played in the golf tournament.
Yeah.
He didn't like the dinner that much, but he would come and play in the golf tournament all the time.
Spencer, did you have a relationship at all with Bill? Did you meet him ever? I know you knew who he was and have an appreciation for his history.
I was fortunate enough, and more so actually pretty recently, seeing him around town. It seemed like he was making an effort really to get out, whether it's to the Pro-Am or even just a run in the summer that we're doing, on a random Tuesday. But I still remember the first time I met him, he came up, I think I was in 6th grade, and he came up to a practice up on Capitol Hill, and when he ducked into the gym. I mean, he's bigger than I think a lot of people realize. It was like everything stopped. Everybody stopped talking. The ball stopped bouncing. It was like he had this, obviously bigger than himself kind of aura about him. And then flash forward a few years later, and the NBA does a rookie transition every year, which they don't tell you where you're going. So they send you the ticket. You fly to New York. Car's supposed to come pick you up and drive you. And that's where they kind of try and scare you straight. Save your money, stay out of trouble. This is what not to do. Right. And something happened. My car got screwed up, and I was just waiting. And first hour, second hour, and I'm starting to go crazy. I'm going in. I'm going to book my own ticket home. And finally, someone calls me, and they're like, "All right, we got another car for you, but you got to wait for Mr. Russell." And I'm like, "Mr. Russell? I got to drive with this random." They're like, "Yeah, Bill Russell will be there." I'm like, "All right, I'll wait." And I got to spend an hour and a half. I didn't get many words in. I don't know. I was so nervous. I don't know if I would have had much to say anyway. But he just, whether it was requested or not, he gave me a lot of advice, and it was just, one of the most unique experiences a 19-year-old, diehard basketball fan could ever had.
I bet you'll appreciate this, Coach, on how intimidating he was all the way through his life. Sam Perkins tells us a story that after Sam's playing days, he's going to an NBA golf outing. And he gets on the bus, and Bill Russell's on the bus. And he sees Sam, and he goes, "Hey, Purvis, how you doing?" Sam walks by him, sits down, and all the guys are giving Sam crap. Says, "He called you Purvis." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, you're not Purvis Ellison, you're Sam Purvis." He goes, "That's Bill Russell. If he thinks I'm Purvis Ellison, that's who I am." And he said that eventually, like, it happened like a couple of different times, and then Bill on his own realized, well, I owe you an apology. You're not Purvis, you're Sam Purvis. Sam was not going to correct Bill Russell, even about his own name. The Sonics Legend Fund, Sandy, I mean it. We've got the right person in charge of this. And is it as easy as people just going to the website and finding a way to donate?
Absolutely, yeah. The website, there's everything that you need is right there.
And you can help some of the Sonics legends. We've talked all afternoon about, we watch these athletes and they thrill us and they give us all this fun time. And then occasionally, like anything else in your life, there's a group that might need a little extra help. And if you're in a position to give some, what better thing to do if you love the Sonics, and I'm assuming you do if you've been sitting here all afternoon, than to maybe donate a little bit there and help offset some things for them. Coach, you're still, I know you're active, I know you got grandkids you're visiting, and you said you're still doing a little bit for Odessa Brown?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's incredible. They've done a wonderful job. They still work with the community, and I'm very proud when I see that, anytime I get a chance to help or work with young people, I try and give some time to it. So the clinic is up and going strong, and the other one that I've been a little involved with, not as much, but is Rise Above, Jackie McCormick's, and they work with Native Americans. And let me tell you something. They do a wonderful job, and a few times that I've been at an event of theirs, it's wonderful. It's wonderful to see the smile on young people's face, because I want them always to say, hey, if he could do it, I could do it.
Right. The championship would have been enough, but you are a pillar of the community, and you've done so much more than that championship, but it's terrific what you and your wife and your family have done in this community. It can't be overstated how powerful you've been.
Well, it's home, and we met some wonderful people here. We've been involved in a lot of things here. We've had tremendous support, and I know that we had to stop our dinner for a while because of COVID and everything, but we're still working on it. We're going to find something else to do.
Coach, I appreciate it. Spencer, you're one of my favorites, and you know it. And we know each other for a long time, and I appreciate all the support you've given me over the years in sitting down and talking about basketball. And I know we're looking forward to the day when the team comes back. And can I sit in your suite and eat all your coconut shrimp?
I don't know about a suite, but I'll be lining up for season tickets.
Attaboy. Spencer, great to see you. Thank you. Spencer Hawes, Sandy Gregory, and the great Hall of Famer Lenny Wilkens, our guests on Iconic Sonics. Thanks, everybody.